used to be the wife of a famous CEO, a powerful, wealthy man admired by the world, until I discovered he had abandoned his own daughter, erased the children we once had, and built an empire on lies. My name is Charlotte, and this is the story of how I stood up, took him down, and protected the child he tried to discard, with everything I had left. Before I share this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever made it through a turning point in your life. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my ex-husband promise forever to someone else. Lucas Meyer stood at the altar of Riverside Estate, his smile camera ready, his tux worth more than most people's cars. The Hudson River glittered behind him like scattered diamonds, and 300 guests murmured their approval at this union of tech royalty. I shouldn't have come, but here I was, Charlotte Meyer, former Charlotte, I reminded myself, sitting in the back row with an old leather journal pressed against my ribs. My fingers traced its worn edges through the fabric of my dress. Inside lay words Lucas had written years ago, promises inked in his own hand about protecting every child we might have. The irony burned like acid in my throat. Savannah looked radiant in her Vera Wang gown, her smile bright enough to power Manhattan. 24 years old, with the whole world at her manicured feet. The media had already crowned her America's tech princess. I remembered when she'd called me her idol, back when she was just an intern bringing me coffee with too much sugar and endless questions about PR strategy. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, and I saw Lucas's shoulders tense. His eyes swept the crowd, a habit from his CEO days, always scanning for threats. When his gaze found mine, the color drained from his face. Good. The woman beside me shifted uncomfortably. "Isn't it awkward for an ex-wife to attend?" she whispered to her companion. I wanted to tell her that awkward didn't begin to cover it. Awkward was finding another woman's earring on your sofa. Awkward was your husband missing your miscarriage because of a crucial investor meeting in Tokyo. This was something else entirely. Walter Meyer sat in the front row. Lucas's father, his face carved from stone. He'd aged 10 years in the past too, the weight of secrets etching deeper lines around his eyes. When I'd slipped in during the processional, he'd given me the slightest nod. He knew why I was here. The ceremony continued, but Lucas kept glancing back. Savannah noticed, her smile faltering. She followed his gaze and found me, confusion clouding her perfect features. I'd been erased so thoroughly from the Meyer narrative that she probably didn't recognize me at first. Then understanding dawned, and her bouquet shook. "If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be wed," the officiant intoned, "speak now or forever hold your peace." The estate fell silent. Even the Hudson seemed to pause its flow. My hand moved to the journal, but I didn't stand. I didn't need to make a scene. The truth had its own timeline. Lucas's voice cracked as he said his vows. Savannah's responses came out thin and uncertain. The crowd sensed something amiss, whispers rippling through the rows like wind through wheat. The photographer's camera clicked relentlessly, capturing every micro-expression for tomorrow's tabloids. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Lucas kissed his bride, but his eyes stayed open, still fixed on me. I stood then, smoothing my simple black dress. Heads turned, phones appeared. The whispers became a roar. I walked out as quietly as I'd entered, leaving 300 guests and 2 newlyweds to wonder. But I left something behind. Doubt, planted like a seed that would grow whether watered or not. In the parking lot, I passed the getaway car decorated with ribbons and cans. Mr. and Mrs. Meyer was painted across the windshield in elegant script. I traced a finger through the condensation on the window, writing nothing, erasing everything. My phone buzzed. "Gabriel, did you do it?" I typed back, "Phase 1 complete." The journal felt warm against my side as I drove away from Riverside Estate. Inside were Lucas's promises, his dreams, his fears, all written when he still knew how to love. But more importantly, it held the truth about our twins, the babies I'd carried for 5 months before stress and neglect stole them away. The babies Lucas knew about. The babies he'd helped erase from existence to protect his stock prices. The sun set over the Hudson as I drove south, painting the sky the color of old bruises. Somewhere behind me, Lucas was cutting his wedding cake, making toasts, playing the part of the happy groom. But I'd seen his face when he spotted me. I'd watched his perfect mask crack, and this was only the beginning. 3 years earlier, I'd stood in our Manhattan penthouse, staring at the same Hudson River from 40 floors up. Lucas had just closed the biggest deal of his career, taking Meyer Tech public with a valuation that made headlines worldwide. We'd celebrated with champagne, Cristal, because Lucas never did anything halfway. "We did it, Charlotte," he'd said, spinning me around our living room. "Everything we dreamed of." We. That word used to mean something. I'd been there from the beginning, crafting the narrative that transformed Lucas from a brilliant programmer into a visionary CEO. Every press release, every media strategy, every carefully orchestrated interview, I'd built his public persona brick by brick. The world saw Lucas Meyer, tech revolutionary. I'd created that image from the raw material of a man who once coded in our garage, surviving on instant ramen and impossible dreams. But IPOs change people. Or maybe they just reveal who someone always was. The late night started first. "Sorry, baby, investor calls with Tokyo." Then the criticism. "You could smile more at events, Charlotte. Energy is everything." My clothes were suddenly too conservative. My conversation too serious. I watched my husband disappear, replaced by someone who spoke in stock prices and market penetration. The earring appeared on a Tuesday. Small, delicate, definitely not mine. It winked at me from between our sofa cushions like a misplaced punctuation mark in our marriage. I held it up to the light, this tiny pearl stud that could have belonged to anyone. But I knew. Savannah had started as my intern 6 months after the IPO. Bright, eager, with an Instagram following that Lucas found invaluable for brand awareness. I'd mentored her, taught her everything about PR, introduced her to my contacts. She'd called me her role model, said she wanted a career just like mine. Be careful what you wish for, I thought now, remembering how she'd gotten exactly that. My career, my husband, my life. The positive pregnancy test came the same week I found the earring. Twins, the doctor confirmed at 8 weeks. 2 heartbeats fluttering on the ultrasound like butterfly wings. I'd sat in my car afterward, clutching the grainy images, planning how to tell Lucas. Maybe this would bring him back. Maybe babies would remind him what we meant. I never got the chance. Lucas was in Singapore when the cramping started. Then Seoul, then Tokyo. Always another city, another deal, another excuse. I bled alone on our bathroom floor at 16 weeks, calling 911 with one hand while trying to reach my husband with the other. His assistant said he was in a board meeting. Couldn't be disturbed. The hospital was kind. The nurses held my hand as my body betrayed me, as our twins slipped away into nothing. They asked if I wanted to call anyone. I said no. What was the point? Lucas had already chosen his priorities. When he finally came home, I was empty, in every way. "These things happen," he'd said, barely looking at the hospital papers. "Probably for the best. You've been so stressed lately." Stressed. As if my stress had appeared from nowhere. As if it wasn't directly tied to finding another woman's earring in my home, to watching my husband transform into a stranger, to carrying our children alone while he built his empire. The gaslighting intensified after that. I was too emotional, too demanding, too focused on the past. When I mentioned trying again for children, he'd wave me off. "Let's wait until things are more stable." Things were never stable enough. I filed for divorce on a Wednesday, using the lawyer a friend recommended. Lucas was surprised, genuinely shocked that I would leave. He offered counseling, vacations, even suggested I could take a sabbatical from the company. Everything except what I actually needed: acknowledgement, truth, and the husband I'd married. The divorce was quick and quiet. I gave him everything: the penthouse, the shares, the life we'd built. I only asked for one thing: my freedom. Lucas was so relieved to avoid a scandal that he agreed immediately. His lawyers drafted an ironclad NDA, which I signed without reading. What did it matter? I had no intention of talking, but I kept that leather journal hidden in a safety deposit box. His handwritten promises about our future children, dated just months before the miscarriage. His own words would eventually damn him, but not yet. Not until the time was right. The movers came on a Thursday. I watched them pack up 5 years of marriage into labeled boxes, erasing my presence from the penthouse. Savannah's things were already appearing: a jacket here, a pair of shoes there. The transition was seamless, as if I'd been nothing more than a placeholder. Walter visited me the day before I left New York. Lucas's father had always been kind to me, a steady presence in the chaos of the Meyer family dynamics. He sat in my empty living room, looking older than his 70 years. "I know what my son did," he said quietly. "All of it." I didn't ask how he knew. Walter had his ways. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. You deserved better." "We all deserve better," I replied. He pressed something into my hand, a USB drive. "When you're ready," he said, "there are things you should know." I still hadn't looked at that drive. Some wounds needed to heal before you could properly examine their depth, but I kept it with the journal. Twin pieces of a puzzle I was still too broken to solve. The last box left the penthouse at sunset. I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows one final time, watching the Hudson flow toward the sea. Somewhere in this city, Lucas was probably meeting with investors, building his empire higher, crafting his narrative of success. Let him. I had my own story to write. The Oregon coast was nothing like Manhattan. Here, the Pacific crashed against basalt cliffs with primal force, and morning fog rolled in like whispered secrets. I'd found the cottage by accident, or maybe by fate, during a desperate Google search for places to disappear. Cannon Beach, Oregon. Population 1,700, where no one cared about tech IPOs or power couples of the year. The cottage came with a neglected garden and peeling paint. Perfect. I needed something to fix that wasn't myself. Those first months, I barely left the house. Grief has its own timeline, and mine demanded isolation. I painted walls at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. I ripped out dead plants with my bare hands, letting the dirt gather under my nails, something the old Charlotte would have never allowed. Some days I didn't shower. Some days I didn't eat. But slowly, incrementally, I began to exist again. The lavender was Gabriel's idea. I met him at the farmer's market, though met implies I was functional enough for interaction. Really, I was standing frozen in front of the plant vendor, overwhelmed by choices I couldn't make. Decision paralysis. Another gift from my marriage, where every choice had been criticized, revised, optimized for Lucas's approval. "Lavender's forgiving," a voice said beside me. "Hardy, comes back stronger after hard winters." Gabriel Reeves stood there in worn jeans and a flannel that had seen better decades, holding a flat of purple plants. His hair was silver at the temples, his hands marked by honest work. A lawyer, I'd learn later, who'd given up corporate law to help people escape bad marriages. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I don't have a green thumb," I admitted. "Neither did I," he said. "But plants are good teachers. They show you what they need if you pay attention." I bought 12 lavender plants that day. Gabriel helped me load them into my beat-up Subaru, then surprised me by offering to help plant them. "Unless you'd rather be alone," he added quickly. I understand alone. But alone was getting heavy. Okay, I said, and that single word felt like jumping off a cliff. We planted in companionable silence. Gabriel showed me how to amend the soil, how to space the plants for growth, how to position them for the best sun. He didn't ask why I was here or where I'd come from. He just helped me plant lavender on a cloudy Tuesday, then left with a wave and a promise that they'd bloom come summer. They did. By July, my garden exploded with purple. The scent drifted through my windows, replacing the sterile penthouse air I'd breathed for years. I started sketching the plants, then painting them. Watercolors at first, tentative and pale. Then oils, bold and textured. Art had always been my secret joy, the thing Lucas called a nice hobby, but never took seriously. The coffee shop happened by accident, too. The owner of Coastal Beans was retiring, and I was in the right place with the wrong amount of wine in my system when she mentioned it. "I'll buy it," I heard myself say, surprising us both. But it felt right. A place to display my art, to serve simple food, to exist without explaining myself. I kept the name, but added a tagline: "Where storms become stories." The locals appreciated the poetry. Tourists Instagrammed the hell out of it. Gabriel became a regular, ordering the same black coffee and blueberry scone every morning at 7:15. We developed a rhythm, comfortable, undemanding. He'd comment on new paintings. I'd ask about his rescue dog, Murphy. Neither of us pushed for more. We were both too scarred for pushing. Then came Lily. November rain was pounding the windows when I heard crying at the back door. Not a cat. I'd learned that difference quickly in a beach town. This was human, young, desperate. I found her huddled under the small overhang, maybe 4 years old, soaked through and clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, my voice rusty with disuse. "You lost?" She looked up with eyes the color of sea glass and nodded. No words, just that nod and shivers that shook her tiny frame. I brought her inside, wrapped her in towels, made her cocoa with extra marshmallows. Still no words. Gabriel arrived for his morning coffee and immediately called the police. "No missing child reports," the officer said after some checking. "Happens sometimes. People passing through, they just..." He shrugged, the casual cruelty of it making my stomach turn. Social services came, forms were filed. But Lily wouldn't speak, wouldn't leave my side. She'd grabbed my hand with surprising strength and refused to let go. Something in her desperation echoed my own hidden places. "Emergency foster placement," the social worker suggested. "Just until we figure things out." I heard myself agreeing. Gabriel raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Lily curled into my side like she'd always belonged there. And maybe she had. Maybe we'd both been abandoned in different ways, left to weather storms alone. That night, she finally spoke. One word. "Stay?" "Yes," I told her. "We'll both stay." The adoption process was complicated, invasive, exhausting. They asked about my marriage, my divorce, my mental health. I answered honestly, or as honestly as the NDA allowed. Gabriel helped with the legal parts, his quiet competence a steady anchor. The lavender bloomed again that spring, and Lily helped me harvest it, her small hands careful with the delicate stems. "Pretty," she said, vocabulary expanding daily now that she felt safe. "Like purple clouds." She was right. The whole garden looked like purple clouds, like hope planted in neat rows. We dried the lavender, made sachets, sold them in the coffee shop. Lily painted labels with enthusiastic imprecision, and I displayed them proudly next to my own art. "You're healing," Gabriel observed one morning, watching Lily and me work on a new painting together. "We both are," I corrected. He smiled, the kind that crinkled his eyes. "Good soil, full sun, proper spacing. Things grow when they have what they need." Lily found the necklace while we were cleaning out the cottage's attic. Previous tenants had left boxes of mysteries. She pulled it out with a gasp of delight, a small silver compass on a delicate chain. Something about it nagged at me, familiar yet strange, but Lily loved it immediately. For finding home, she announced. And how could I argue with that? The coffee shop thrived. My paintings sold. Lily started kindergarten and came home with stories and finger-painted masterpieces. Gabriel and I circled each other in careful orbits, neither ready to disturb the delicate balance we'd found. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but planning hadn't worked out so well for me before. Then Walter's letter arrived, forwarded through 3 addresses, finally finding me in my hidden corner of the world. His handwriting was shaky, but clear. Charlotte, I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, they say months at best. There are things you need to know about Lucas, about what really happened. I've been a coward, but perhaps I can be brave before the end. The USB drive I gave you, please look at it now. You deserve the whole truth. And there's something else. Something about a child. The letter slipped from my fingers. Lily was in the garden, singing to the lavender in her made-up language. The compass necklace caught the light at her throat, and suddenly I knew why it looked familiar. I'd seen its twin before, in a jewelry box in Lucas's penthouse. A family heirloom, he'd said, one of a matched pair. My hands shook as I retrieved the USB drive from its hiding place. Whatever truth Walter had saved for me, I wasn't sure I was ready. But readiness, I'd learned, was a luxury I couldn't afford. The truth didn't wait for you to be ready. It just arrived, like crying children in the rain, and demanded you be brave enough to let it in. The USB drive felt heavier than its mere grams as I plugged it into my laptop. Lily was asleep upstairs, peaceful and unaware that her world might be shifting beneath her. The coffee shop was closed, the closed sign keeping the world at bay while I faced whatever Walter had preserved. The first file was a video. Walter's face appeared, healthier than his letter suggested but already marked by illness. He sat in what looked like a lawyer's office, formal and prepared. "Charlotte," he began, "if you're watching this, I've finally found the courage to do what I should have done years ago. I'm sorry it took dying to make me brave." He paused, collected himself. "Lucas knew about your pregnancy from the beginning. He had your medical records accessed, illegally, but money opens doors that should stay closed. When you lost the twins, he saw an opportunity, not a tragedy." My stomach clenched. I'd suspected Lucas's coldness ran deep, but this? He paid the hospital to seal the records, to list the miscarriage as a routine D&C. No mention of twins, no genetic testing that might be useful later. He was already planning his future, you see, and children, especially lost children, didn't fit the narrative. Walter shifted, pain flickering across his features. "But there's more. The fertility treatments you underwent before conceiving. Lucas had embryos frozen without telling you. It was supposed to be insurance," he said, "for the company's future. A CEO with a family looks stable to investors." The room spun. I gripped the table, forcing myself to keep watching. 3 years ago, a young woman came to Lucas. Desperate, pregnant, nowhere to turn. One of his indiscretions from a business trip. He couldn't have a scandal, not with the IPO pending. So he made a deal. He'd take the child, raise it properly, but she had to disappear. Sign away all rights, take the money and vanish. My eyes flew to the ceiling, toward where Lily slept. No, it couldn't be. The child was born in Portland, a girl. Lucas placed her with a family he thought he could control, but something went wrong. The family moved, then abandoned her when money troubles hit. The last report I have shows her in the Oregon foster system, age 4. I've included all the documentation I could find. I paused the video, my hands shaking too hard to continue. The next file was a birth certificate. Baby girl Morrison, born in Portland, Oregon. Mother, Sarah Morrison, 22, address unknown. Father, unknown. But attached was a DNA test, ordered by Lucas, confirming paternity. The dates lined up, the location lined up, the compass necklace. I forced myself to open the photo folder. There was Lucas, younger, standing next to a scared-looking woman holding a baby. The woman's face was turned away, but the baby, I'd recognize those sea glass eyes anywhere. Another photo, 2 compass necklaces in a velvet box. For the twins, Lucas's handwriting noted, so they can always find their way back to each other. Lily wasn't just any abandoned child. She was Lucas's daughter, my husband's secret child, born while I grieved our twins alone. Abandoned like an inconvenient plot point in his carefully crafted story. But how had she found me? Of all the small towns, all the coffee shops, the last file was a letter from Sarah Morrison. Her handwriting was unsteady, desperate. I know I signed papers. I know I promised to disappear, but I can't stop thinking about her. You said she'd have everything, but money isn't everything. I grew up in Cannon Beach. My grandmother had a cottage there, sold it years ago to pay debts. Maybe it's stupid, but I left her there, at that cottage. I thought maybe someone kind would find her, someone who knew about loss, someone who could love her the way I'm not allowed to. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I ran outside and vomited in the lavender, the scent that usually calmed me now mixing with bile and revelation. The cottage. This cottage. Of all the places to disappear to, I'd chosen the one where Lucas's abandoned daughter would be left. Coincidence or providence, I couldn't tell anymore. Gabriel found me there at dawn, still kneeling in the garden. He took one look at my face and guided me inside, made tea, waited. I showed him everything, watched his lawyer's mind process the legal implications, while his human heart grappled with the moral ones. She's legally yours, he said finally. The adoption is final, but Lucas thinks she's gone, I finished, lost in the system, one more inconvenient truth erased. What are you going to do? I thought about Lily, asleep upstairs with her stuffed rabbit and her compass necklace. My daughter in every way that mattered, but also Lucas's daughter, the twin who survived, in a twisted way, the child I was meant to mother. I'm going to protect her, I said, and then I'm going to destroy him. Gabriel didn't flinch. How? He's getting married, big society wedding, all of New York watching. He's built this perfect image, successful CEO, tragic first marriage, fresh start with a younger woman. But images are fragile things. I should know. I built his first one. I pulled out the leather journal, Lucas's promises about our children. Combined with Walter's evidence, it painted a picture of a man who disposed of children like failed products, who paid for silence and sealed records and abandoned daughters. The wedding, I said. I'll go to the wedding. Gabriel's hand covered mine. You don't have to do this alone. But I did. This last part, this final confrontation, was mine to face. Charlotte Meyer might have been erased, but Charlotte, just Charlotte, had found her voice in a small coastal town, raised it in a garden of lavender, strengthened it with a daughter's love. Lucas had taken everything once, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd left me alive. And worse, he'd left me with nothing to lose and everything to protect. The invitation had come last month, a courtesy from someone who remembered the old days. Riverside Estate, June wedding, media coverage guaranteed. Perfect. Lily stirred upstairs, calling out in her sleep. I went to her, smoothed her hair, adjusted the compass necklace she never removed. My daughter. Lucas's daughter. The truth suspended between us like morning fog, beautiful and obscuring in equal measure. Love you, Mama, she mumbled, still mostly asleep. Love you too, baby. Forever and always. And I meant it. Whatever came next, whatever truths I unleashed, Lily would be protected. She'd know she was chosen, fought for, loved beyond measure. That was more than Lucas had ever given anyone. The wedding was in 3 days. Time to see if the lavender had taught me its secrets, how to come back stronger after the hardest seasons, how to bloom despite the damage. Time to go home. Or at least to the place that had once been home, where ghosts waited to be confronted and truth demanded its day in the sun. Manhattan looked exactly the same, and completely foreign. 3 years away had shifted my perspective. Or maybe I'd finally learned to see clearly. The city that had once felt like the center of the universe now seemed small, confined by its own self-importance. I'd left Lily with Gabriel, despite her protests. Just a quick trip, I'd promised, hating the lie but knowing the truth was worse. How could I explain I was going to confront the father she didn't know existed? The man whose DNA she carried but whose love she'd never receive? My hotel room overlooked Central Park, a deliberate choice. I needed to remember beauty existed here too, not just the sharp edges that had cut me to pieces. I'd arrived 2 days before the wedding, time enough to execute my plan. Felix Chen answered on the second ring. Charlotte Meyer? Just Charlotte now, I corrected. I have a story for you, Felix, the kind that wins Pulitzers. Felix had been one of the few journalists who'd questioned the official narrative of our divorce. He'd smelled something off but couldn't prove it. Now I could hand him proof wrapped in a bow. Or in this case, sealed in hospital records and Walter's dying testimony. We met at a dive bar in Queens, far from Manhattan's watching eyes. Felix looked older, grayer, but his eyes still held that hungry gleam of a reporter sensing truth. Jesus, he breathed after reviewing everything. Charlotte, this is huge. But the legal implications. I signed an NDA about the divorce, I said. But nothing about Lucas's other activities. Nothing about abandoned children or medical records fraud or the bribes he paid to bury the truth. The wedding's tomorrow? I know. Felix studied me over his beer. You sure about this? Once I publish, there's no taking it back. I thought about Lily, safe in Oregon with Gabriel and Murphy the dog. About the twins I'd lost, erased from existence like a coding error. About Sarah Morrison, paid to disappear, living with the ghost of her abandoned daughter. I'm sure, but I had one more card to play. That evening, I called Savannah. She answered with suspicious warmth. Charlotte, is this really you? We need to talk, I said. About Lucas, about what you're marrying. Silence, then, I can't. He wouldn't. Room 1247 at the Carlisle, 1 hour, just you. She came. Of course she came. The girl I'd mentored still lived somewhere inside the tech princess, curious and eager beneath the polish. She looked expensive in the way Lucas preferred. Designer everything. Subtle work done to enhance what was already beautiful. But her eyes held new shadows. You look good, she said awkwardly. Different. Happier? Distance helps, I said. Sit, please. I played her the recording I'd made of Lucas 2 years ago during one of our last fights. His voice filled the hotel room, cruel and dismissive. Savannah? She's moldable. Young enough to shape, hungry enough to obey. She'll be perfect for the next phase. Not like you, Charlotte. You got too independent, too opinionated. But don't worry. I'll keep her in line better than I did you. Savannah's perfect face crumpled. He said I was special, that I reminded him of nobody else. You reminded him of me, I said gently. The me he thought he could improve. But here's the thing, Savannah. He's wrong. You're not moldable. You're brilliant. Remember the Patterson campaign? That was your strategy. The Riverside acquisition? Your connections made that happen. He said those were his ideas. He says a lot of things. I showed her the medical records, the proof of our twins, the way Lucas had erased them. Then carefully, I told her about Lily, about Sarah Morrison, about the daughter Lucas had thrown away like an inconvenient bug in his code. Savannah sat in silence for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. I'm pregnant. The words hung between us like a shared wound. 6 weeks, she continued. I was going to announce it at the reception. Lucas doesn't know yet. I wanted to surprise him, thought he'd be happy. But now? Now you know what Lucas does with inconvenient children. She nodded, tears cutting channels through her perfect makeup. What do I do? Whatever you decide, I'll support you, I said. But you deserve to know the truth before you legally bind yourself to him, before you give him power over another child. I left her with copies of everything: Felix's contact information and a choice. The girl I'd mentored had become a woman facing an impossible decision, but at least she'd face it with open eyes. That night, I sat at my hotel window watching the city pulse with its restless energy. Tomorrow, Lucas would stand at another altar, make more promises he wouldn't keep, but this time the world would be watching differently. This time, the truth had allies. My phone buzzed. A text from Gabriel. Lily lost a tooth. Tooth Fairy came. She wants to know if fairies have frequent flyer miles for traveling to New York. I smiled, the tension in my chest easing slightly. Tell her fairies can be anywhere they're needed. Come home safe, he replied. We need you. Need. Such a simple word, but I'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed instead of useful, to be missed instead of managed, to be loved instead of optimized. One more day, one more performance in the city of endless shows. Then I could go home to lavender and sea air and a daughter who didn't care about my past, only that I was there to tuck her in and paint purple clouds. Felix would publish the story in the morning, timed for maximum impact. Wedding guests would receive the notifications over breakfast, would arrive at Riverside Estate with questions instead of congratulations. The empire Lucas had built on buried truths would face its first real earthquake. But I wouldn't be there to see it crumble. I'd already bought my return ticket, a red-eye back to Portland, then the drive down the coast to where real life waited. I'd done what I came to do. The rest was just dominoes, falling in inevitable patterns. Truth was patient, I'd learned. It could wait years to bloom, dormant like lavender through hard winters. But when its season finally came, nothing could stop it from breaking through. Tomorrow, the truth would have its wedding day, and I'd be 30,000 feet above it all, flying home to the family I'd chosen and the life I'd built from scratch. Lucas could keep New York. I had everything that mattered. Felix's article dropped at 6 a.m. Tech Titan's secret: the abandoned daughter and erased twins of Lucas Meyer. By 6:30, it was trending. By 7, my phone was exploding with calls I didn't answer. I turned it off, dressed carefully in the black dress I'd worn to leave Lucas 3 years ago, and took a car to Riverside Estate. I wasn't going to hide. Not anymore. The estate buzzed with frantic energy. Wedding planners rushed about with tablets, trying to manage a crisis in real time. Guests clustered in confused groups, phones out, sharing screens and shocked expressions. I walked through them like a ghost made flesh, invisible until someone recognized me. Oh my God, Charlotte? The whispers started, followed me like a wave. I kept walking, through the gardens where photographers were packing up equipment, past the reception tent where Mr. and Mrs. Meyer napkins would go unused. I found Walter in the groom's suite, alone. He looked smaller than in his video, cancer eating him from the inside. But his eyes were clear when they met mine. You came, he said. You knew I would. He nodded, struggling to stand. I didn't help him. We were past such courtesies. Lucas? I asked. Locked in the bathroom, on the phone with lawyers. Savannah's gone. Good for her. Walter smiled sadly. I failed him, you know. Taught him that image mattered more than substance, that problems could be solved with money and influence. I created the man who could throw away his own daughter. We all create ourselves, I said. Lucas chose who he became. The little girl? Lily. She's happy? The question caught me off guard. Yes, she's happy. Good. He sank back into his chair. That's something, at least. One child saved from the Meyer legacy. The bathroom door burst open. Lucas emerged, phone pressed to his ear, and froze when he saw me. 3 years had aged him badly. The Golden Boy CEO looked haggard, his perfect facade cracking under pressure. I'll call you back, he said, ending the call. Charlotte, you did this. No, I said calmly. You did this. I just stopped hiding it. That article is full of lies. Which part? I interrupted. The twins you erased? The daughter you abandoned? The medical records you had sealed? Be specific, Lucas. Your lawyers will need clarity. His hands clenched. The old Charlotte would have flinched, but the woman who'd planted lavender and raised Lily and learned to paint her pain didn't move. I can destroy you, he said. The NDA doesn't cover this. I had excellent legal advice. I thought of Gabriel, poring over documents at my kitchen table, finding every loophole. Besides, what are you going to do? Sue me for telling the truth about your abandoned daughter? I'm sure that will help your image. Where is she? The question exploded from him. The girl, where is she? Safe, I said. Loved, raised by someone who chose her, who sees her as a gift instead of a problem to be solved. She's mine, my blood. Blood means nothing without love, Lucas. You taught me that. Footsteps in the hallway. Savannah appeared, still in her wedding dress but with sneakers replacing her designer heels. Her makeup was ruined, but her spine was straight. Behind her stood Felix Chen, recorder in hand. I have something to say, Savannah announced. Lucas went pale. Sweetheart, you're confused. The stress— I'm pregnant, she said, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. And I'm leaving. I won't let you erase another child, Lucas. I won't let you turn me into another Charlotte, gaslit into silence while you rewrite reality. Savannah. He reached for her. She stepped back, finding my hand instead. The gesture shocked everyone, including me. The young woman who'd replaced me standing with me, choosing solidarity over silence. Charlotte warned me, she continued. Showed me who you really are. What you do to inconvenient truths. Well, here's an inconvenient truth. I'm done. The wedding's off. The merger with my father's company is off. Everything is off. The room erupted. Guests pushed in, phones recording, the private disaster becoming public entertainment. Lucas lunged toward us, but Walter's cane caught his arm. Enough, the old man said. You've lost, son. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left. Lucas looked between us. His dying father, his fleeing bride, his discarded wife. The king of his carefully constructed kingdom watching it all collapse. His mouth opened and closed, but for once, the man who always had the right words said nothing. I felt no satisfaction, no victory, just a bone-deep tiredness and the pull of home. I'd come here for closure, but watching Lucas Meyer crumble didn't heal what he'd broken. Only time and lavender and Lily's laughter had done that. I'm leaving, I announced to no one in particular. Then to Savannah, call me if you need anything at all. She squeezed my hand. Thank you. I walked out through the ruins of the wedding that would never be. Past the cake with its perfect fondant flowers, past the empty chairs with their silk bows, past the altar where more lies would have been spoken. Some guests tried to stop me, wanting quotes or explanations, but I had nothing left to give this place. At the estate's entrance, a young woman waited. She looked exhausted, years of hard living etched into her young face. I knew who she was before she spoke. You're Charlotte, Sarah Morrison said. You have her. You have my daughter. My breath caught. How did you— The article, the pictures. I've been looking for her for 2 years, ever since the family I placed her with disappeared. I tried to take back the adoption, but Lucas had made sure I couldn't. But I never stopped looking. She's safe, I said carefully. Happy. Loved. I know. Tears streaked her face. I've been watching. The coffee shop in Cannon Beach. I've seen her through the windows, painting with you, laughing, being a kid, being loved the way I couldn't love her. You could have— No, she interrupted. I'm an addict. Clean now, but for how long? I know who I am, what I can and can't give. But I needed to know she was okay. Needed to see that someone loved her the way she deserves. We stood there, 2 women bound by a child neither had planned for, but both loved in their own ways. Can I— Sarah swallowed hard. Can I write to her? Not now. When she's older. When she asks. Just so she knows I didn't throw her away. That I left her at that cottage because somehow I knew, someone good would find her. Yes, I said. When she's ready, when she asks, I'll tell her she was loved from the beginning, that her birth mother made the hardest choice from love. Sarah nodded, backing away. Take care of her. Always. She disappeared into the crowd of arriving guests, another ghost at this funeral of a wedding. I stood alone for a moment, processing the strange symmetry of it all. Then I got in my rental car and drove away from Riverside Estate for the last time. Behind me, Lucas Meyer's world continued to implode. Tomorrow, there would be lawsuits and investigations and congressional hearings about medical record fraud. The empire built on lies would face its reckoning, but I wouldn't be there to see it. I had a plane to catch, a daughter to tuck in, lavender to tend. I had a real life waiting, built on truth and choices and love that didn't need to be optimized. The Hudson looked beautiful in the morning light as I drove toward the airport. I thought about the woman who'd stared at this river from a penthouse prison, too broken to imagine freedom. She'd been erased, that Charlotte Meyer. But from her ashes, someone stronger had grown. Just Charlotte, mother to Lily, painter of purple clouds, maker of good coffee and tender of gardens. It was more than enough. It was everything. 6 months later, the letter from Lucas's lawyers arrived on a Tuesday, thick with legal threats and impotent fury. I fed it to the fireplace while Lily practiced reading at the kitchen table, sounding out words from a picture book about brave dragons and clever princesses. "What's that, Mama?" she asked, watching the papers curl into ash. "Old stories," I said. "Ones we don't need anymore." The threats had no teeth. Lucas was too busy fighting federal investigators to wage war on me. Meyertech's board had forced him out after the medical fraud scandal broke wide open. The SEC was investigating insider trading. 3 class action lawsuits had been filed by investors who felt deceived by the company's family-friendly image. His fall had been swift and thorough. The media that had once crowned him now dissected his disgrace with surgical precision. Tech titan to tech tyrant. The rise and fall of Lucas Meyer. Every headline another nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed image. But I didn't follow the coverage anymore. Gabriel brought me updates when necessary, filtering the noise into digestible facts. Lucas was facing jail time. His assets were frozen. The penthouse had been sold to cover legal fees. Good, was all I said, and meant it. Savannah had her baby in December, a healthy girl she named Grace. She sent pictures sometimes. A tiny face surrounded by pink blankets, dark hair like her father's, but eyes that held her mother's strength. She was raising Grace alone, backed by her family's money and a memoir deal that promised to tell her side of the Meyer story. "I hope she finds peace," I told Gabriel when he showed me the announcement. "Do you?" I thought about it, watching Lily paint at her easel by the window. Purple flowers, always purple flowers, but now with silver stars scattered between them. Yes, I decided. We all deserve peace after surviving Lucas Meyer. The coffee shop thrived. Word had somehow spread about the owner who'd stood up to a tech giant, and tourists came specifically to buy my lavender paintings and hear snippets of the story. I gave them coffee and art, but kept my words to myself. The real story lived in the canvases, storms giving way to calm seas, flowers blooming through concrete, light breaking through after the darkest nights. Felix Chen won his Pulitzer. He sent me a photo of the ceremony, his smile bright with vindication. The committee had praised his fearless investigation into power, privilege, and the price of silence. I framed the article and hung it in the back office, not from pride, but as a reminder that truth, however delayed, finds its way. Sarah Morrison kept her distance, but sent cards on Lily's birthday. Simple things: a drawing of a butterfly, a pressed flower, wishes for happiness written in careful script. I saved them in a box for someday, when Lily was old enough to understand that love came in many forms, including letting go. Walter Meyer died in November, quietly and without fanfare. His lawyer sent me a letter he'd written in his final days. Charlotte, tell Lily about the good in the Meyer line, if any remains. Tell her that her grandfather loved her from afar and hoped she'd grow to be nothing like the men who came before. The compass was my mother's. May it always point her toward truth. With regret and hope, Walter. I read it to Lily that night, simplified but honest. She listened solemnly, then asked if she could keep the letter with her special things. I said yes, understanding that children needed their histories, even the complicated parts. Gabriel and I moved slowly, carefully, like two people diffusing a bomb of past hurt. He never pushed, never demanded. We had dinners when Lily was at sleepovers, walks on the beach when the shop was closed, conversations that went deeper than coffee preferences and weather. I'm not looking to be saved, I told him one evening, the sunset painting the ocean in shades of healing. Good, he replied. I'm not looking to save anyone, just hoping to walk alongside. It wasn't love yet, not the burning kind I'd felt for Lucas. This was quieter, steadier, like lavender returning each spring, reliable and surprising in equal measure. Lily adored him, especially Murphy, who'd become her constant shadow. Family expanding in unexpected ways. The day everything shifted was ordinary. Tuesday, light rain, the coffee shop humming with regulars. Lily was at school, learning about butterflies and metamorphosis. I was painting in the back when she burst through the door early, eyes bright with discovery. Mama, look! She thrust a library book at me, finger pointing to a photograph. This is Daddy, right? From the pictures you showed me? I looked down at Lucas's face, staring up from a cautionary tale about tech ethics. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Yes, baby. That's your biological father. She studied the photo seriously. He looked sad. Maybe he was. Are you sad? I pulled her close, breathing in her shampoo and crayon scent. No, baby, I'm not sad. I have you and Gabriel and Murphy and our flowers. I have everything. She considered this, then nodded with 5-year-old certainty. Good. Can we paint the butterflies I learned about? Purple ones? Purple butterflies it is. We painted until dinner time. Purple wings taking flight across canvas. Transformation made beautiful. The past acknowledged but not defining. Outside, the lavender swayed in the ocean breeze, roots deep and blooms reaching toward whatever came next. This was healing, not the absence of scars, but the beauty that grew around them. Not erasure, but integration. Not forgetting, but moving forward anyway, one purple butterfly at a time. That night, after Lily was asleep, I stood in my garden. The lavender was dormant for winter, but I knew it was there, waiting beneath the soil. Patient, certain, ready to bloom again when the season was right. Just like us.